Okay, so if I gotta be honest, I have no clue what I'm doing for this. I'm completely new to YouTube. But I've heard Sega's pretty chill with her music, so... DANDADAN is arguably the most popular anime at the moment, having one of the highest debuting episodes of all time, and also getting 22 nominations at the Crunchyroll Anime Awards. It's a beloved anime in general, praised for its art style, animation, characters, romance, and so much more than that. But for something so big, there also ends up being criticism that is bigger. So real quick before I go on with this, I want to clarify that there will be sensitive topics mentioned in this, so here's a list of trigger warnings. And if you do potentially have some triggers or, might not be able to get through it, I'll put up a symbol here so you know when you want to skip, alongside a timestamp of course. As most of you will know, fanservice is when something is added to a piece of media in order to please the audience. And whether this be from bringing a dead character back to showing some character's underwear, it's generally disliked, especially with an anime. However, when an anime or manga such as Chainsaw Man, for example, adds sexual content or some forms of fan service in order to add on to the plot, it can be praised or appreciated at the bare minimum.
I'll let you suckle my
One thing that does need to be clarified is that DANDADAN is a show for mature audiences. Now, no, this is not in the right to justify it, but when you compare Chainsaw Man and DANDADAN, Chainsaw Man has much further explicit moments, or in terms of themes it can be argued that it does. Yet on the manga covers, Chainsaw Man does not have a mature content warning unlike DANDADAN. And when it comes to criticisms or flaws, DANDADAN is criticised for its explicitness, which honestly, can be rightfully so if I have to be truthful. But the thing is that people don't see this for what it actually is. DANDADAN does not include fan service, but it includes gross and out-of-pocket moments so we can encapsulate what is going on, and the true theme of the story. DANDADAN is an anime about teenagers growing up in a world where there will always be harm. And they face the normal struggles, in an exaggerated sense of course, of being a teenager. Take all of the characters we know: Okarun, Momo, Jiji, Aira, and Kinta. If you truly think deeply, you can align all 5 of these characters to at least one trope or person you know in real life. Okarun being an awkward, quiet kid, Momo being a nice, popular girl, Jiji being a comic relief and funny guy, Aira being someone who just thinks they're the main character, and Kinta just being Kinta. These are basic and generic tropes that we will encounter in our lives at least once, and whilst this isn't necessarily related to the themes of growing up, each of these characters represent the aspect of growing up in their perspective. Starting with Momo, she symbolised how it feels to be a woman growing up in a world where it's filled with perverts and freaks. Okay, that's a very exaggerated form of wording it, but in such a place as Japan, perverts and that sort of thing is quite frequent, and honestly, she's an icon of being a woman. Her first panel was literally kicking her ex who wants to use her for sex. Yukino Butatsu also compared her to Superman, saying that she stands in the face of violence, which is honestly a perfect way to compare her character. She also isn't some damsel in distress for Okarun. She can empower her antagonists, her enemies, and she can do this alone without anyone helping her. Next up is Okarun. Now, his character is literally being emasculated from having his balls taken to feeling not much like a true man. He's living an experience where he's trying to find out what does it mean to be a man, and how is he going to achieve it as he grows up. He makes constant remarks throughout the series where he feels emasculated and feels like he needs to be better, and obviously with the presence of Jiji, he feels like he's a threat to him, that he's going to interfere in his and Momo's relationship. And obviously this ends up being false because Jiji's just a G, okay? Speaking of Jiji, him and Aira are actually pretty similar in terms of what their characters symbolise. Jiji's someone who puts comedy as his persona and mask. He goes through a lot and is quite overlooked, but he holds it in with the way he acts to others. Whereas Aira does this by trying to be the main character. She just uses her charisma and energy. She also obviously has her obsession, I suppose, with popularity. Yet, even with the way Aira acts initially, she is not as bad as she seems. She pretty much just wants recognition. And for Kinta, he's someone who, well, is lonely. Kinta is someone who's been trying to find somebody or a friend for a while, and he obviously wants recognition similar to Aira, from women and from Okarun, begging for his teachings obviously. And funnily enough, it isn't just Kinta who faces loneliness, all the characters face this too. Think about Momo for example. She felt isolated from her friends to an extent. She feels as if they're not there for her at times, even though they are good friends obviously. She feels as if people don't understand her well, and she faced bullying as a child, which Okarun actually did too. Okarun's emasculation sprouts from bullying. He isolated himself from society itself and stayed reserved, trying to prevent aliens because of this, which is his whole character arc and the conflicts that he faces. Jiji's loneliness comes from the possession of evil eye. It's not necessarily loneliness, but he feels sort of misunderstood. Obviously, he tries to do everything in his will to protect evil eye, which he cannot do until evil eye does end up coming to that agreement with Okarun. And whilst Aira is popular, she is lonely to the extent that she wants to feel more than she is feeling already, and she wants the attention sort of from Okarun. And lastly, for Kinta, there's one small detail I noticed in episode 22. When he's doing that dance on the way to school and he sees those two people, he immediately stops and just starts walking casually. Yes, Kinta is someone who's extra and wacky, but he does fear this, I suppose. I mean, I could be entirely wrong, I've not read much of the manga, but this is my interpretation at least. I also believe that he genuinely does want to be friends with Okarun. So yes, DANDADAN is a show about adolescents growing up in a world with puberty, and obviously the negatives to this. Case closed. So obviously what I've said doesn't just get DANDADAN out of the smoke. All it really gives is reasons to why stuff happened and not necessarily anything in particular. A lot of the graphic scenes do end up being way too over the top, and there's absolutely no problem for not wanting to watch it because of this. This video isn't trying to say go watch DANDADAN, it's just trying to clear up why people still watch it. And I do very much believe that it is the mature audience case that I mentioned earlier. I think with DANDADAN they're trying to make it as if they're not holding your hand through it all and you are getting the brutal reality. Because minus Okarun's balls, there's not really any joke made out with the sexual assault moment, and I'll go on to that later when I focus on Turbo Granny. And that's a criticism that I really don't understand, how people say that it isn't taken seriously. So obviously in episode 1, the main thing that people don't like are the Serpos, the aliens that kidnap Momo and eventually go on to try assaulting her. Now fun fact, if I'm correct, Serpos means to creep around in Latin, and they possess these forms of creepy businessmen, which honestly I think that represents the modern incel era of Japan. Incels pretty much make everything revolve around sex, and that is the purpose of the Serpos in episode 1. In the manga they're literally described as genital stealing aliens. As for their appearance, it kinda gives us the idea of a failed man. Now first of all, when I say man, I mean the stereotypical man. Obviously throughout society in general, it's been made a stereotype that men should be providers and breadwinners for families, and the appearance of a businessman or salaryman conveys this idea, especially because they're trash, they're like the worst anything can be, yet they have a normal shell on the outside. Also, people can say that businessmen kind of give off older cultural vibes, not necessarily older, but when you're told, oh, go work in an office. Going back to societal stereotypes, I can bring across the idea that the past echoes negative stereotypes. If the appearance of businessmen do happen to symbolize an older generation, then that would suggest that it also symbolizes older culture, where obviously men were treated superior and women were treated like objects. Also, going on more with the idea of appearance being false, I think Evil Eye can add on to this. Evil Eye is obviously this child with the tragic backstory that takes over Jiji's body, and something that Evil Eye portrays is the whole idea of predatory urges. Obviously animals have either a predator or prey nature, and Evil Eye very much gives the vibes of that he wants to be on top, he wants to dominate the world. And one graphic scene that's criticised a lot is when Evil Eye tears off Momo's clothes, which obviously, like, what was the purpose for that? First of all, before I go on to this, I just want to clarify, I don't think Evil Eye is actually meaning to like get any sexual gratification out of this. But anyways, the name Evil Eye, that obviously has meaning to it, but I want to put a spin on it and think, what if the Evil Eye is the male gaze? His attack on Momo very much serves the vibes of the male gaze and how he doesn't see her as a person. He sees her as a body to consume and use. Well, not necessarily use, but kill obviously. And in Japan, a lot of sexual assault attacks happen in public and open places. So once you consider that and Evil Eye's attack on Momo, you start to find more correlations. And yes, he was a kind young boy who was treated terribly, which adds on to cultural values and how they're also a negative impact. The way that he was raised became his foundation and how he ended up acting, and this reveals a new part of DANDADAN, how it can be a critique on culture. For example, children raised under violence will likely end up acting in violence. The way that we are raised or treated or the way we're told to act will affect our futures. Okarun's journey is him trying to find out what is being a man, but on the real side he is a gentleman, he is what he should define as a man. Yet he has the natural urge to find Momo as a damsel in distress, trying to become stronger to help her. Because of society, he has that natural instinct that he needs to save Momo because how he has seen things in his life. And now finally I want to discuss Turbo Granny. Now we actually know her origin, but a lot of it is less vague with some things implied. Turbo Granny is obviously a ghost in Japan which comforts the spirits of dead girls who died horrible deaths. So as she would comfort them in revenge to anyone who passed through the tunnel, she would end up cursing whoever went by there and take away their reproductive organs. And let's be real quickly, it must have been men, because I doubt any woman would be attacked by Turbo Granny in this case. But anyways, Turbo Granny's character is literally a story of sexual assault. We don't know if she somehow died from it if she was a human once, but we know she did comfort the spirits of girls who died horrible deaths which could have been sexual assault. Turbo Granny's whole character is stealing Okarun's balls, there is reason to it, it's not just some funny little gag. Turbo Granny is literally getting revenge on the perpetrators. The Serpos represent modern incel culture, and Evil Eye represents repressed masculinity and the horrible sides to it. When you add them all together, it ends up being a major cultural problem, the way they ended up being raised. Now, not necessarily Turbo Granny, but when you consider it the incel culture and Evil Eye. DANDADAN is essentially an allegory on how we are raised, specifically with how vulnerable children can be. All of these moments are intentionally uncomfortable to leave us thinking about them after, and thinking about real life scenarios or cases that could be similar to this. This isn't just fiction, but some events that could happen are realistic. If exaggerated, yes, that doesn't change much, it could still be horrible. DANDADAN is not a series that uses fan service or shock value. It's a compelling story about growing up in a world where you are vulnerable, where anything can happen to you, but you can shape it to be the best you can make it. You can survive through trauma and pain that you go through, and especially when you consider the aspect of it being a story based on teenagers and growing up. All the aspects of comedy, horror, romance, these can represent hormonal shifts. As you grow up, you have many different feelings and emotions which vary at any moment really. I'm not saying go watch DANDADAN, because if you're uncomfortable you shouldn't watch it, but at least understand what it's about and what actually happens. Also, if you genuinely watch it and think that's fan service or appealing, what is wrong with you? Okay, so thank you guys so much for watching. This is my first YouTube video, which I had no clue what to do. I was kind of struggling, but it went well. Please like and subscribe and share. Follow my TikToks, I'm more active there. I plan to post one YouTube video a month, and potentially more depending on how the reception of this goes. I don't think it'll do too well, but I'm just happy that I did it. Also, I really hope I don't get copyright strikes. I have no idea how this all works. Anyways, yes, thank you for watching. My socials are in the bio if you want to follow any. And have a great day.